Yesterday on the Glenn Beck TV show, you had Gerald Talente, and he just came out of nowhere, I believe, Bob, and now he's everywhere.
Well, that makes me very suspicious. I'm only guessing.
He's predicting that the economy is heading into a DNR, a depression and revolution. He did say have your weapons ready, and that's pretty interesting for a television program to have the allowance of that.
I'm thunderstruck, but I'm glad he's saying those things because they're true. And I hope he's not one of them, and I don't know. And he's got tremendous coverage, and I don't know how that happens.
Yeah.
I've been on radio and television since, probably 1974. And I know how difficult it is to get on those programs, so he obviously is wired somewhere because they wouldn't let me on. And I'd be saying relatively the same thing, but they wouldn't let me on.
This question is in from Norm. He says he agrees with all of your strategies, Bob, about preserving wealth, and however, is there a possibility of something that's been missed, buying a large piece of land that one can move on to and surviving the upcoming crisis? This would, of course, be inclusive of purchasing gold. He believes after listening to you for many, many years, that is what you did do to stay safe, moving onto a large piece of land with safety.
Well, there's a lot of things to consider there. A large piece of land, is there a house on it? If there isn't, you got to build one. Is there any people in the area, within several miles of where you live or will live on this piece of land? And what are their attitudes toward what is going on? I mean, if they basically agree with you, it might be a good place to be so you can interconnect with each other. Being out of the city is a great idea because, violence usually happens in cities, but it's no guarantee of safety. Because, after the people, if they are going to riot within the cities and they've looted all they can loot, and then they head to the countryside. And you don't want to be there all alone. I mean, you got to have a system set up where everyone goes to one place so that they can defend one another, and you got to make elaborate preparations because you're isolated. I mean, what is the police car going to come out with one guy and help you? And you got 30 marauders heading toward your property? That's a tough one to call. So you got to be in an area where there's some people that will connect with you. And maybe you'll get lucky and no one will come your way. But you can't count on that. I mean, when I look at things, I always figure out what the worst is and where are my escape routes. Then if nothing happens, it's okay. And there's very few people who think that way. Very few people.
Assuming we live through World War III and we have the meltdown and the meltdown in the dollar and the flight to gold, what happens next? What will the next investment structure be? Would it be commercial real estate, vacant land? Just a speculative question.
Well, you don't know until you get there, but if real estate's gone down 90% and gold has gone to $6,000 an ounce, obviously you have a lot of buying power. And then you got to make up your mind as to whether it's a good time to invest. I mean, is the economy going to get going again, or how long is it going to take? In commercial real estate, how long is it going to take for people to fill up those offices or that strip mall or whatever? same thing is true of residential real estate. The house that costs $400,000 might be $30,000. And maybe one MS-64 saint will buy that property. But is there anybody who's going to be able to pay the rent to be in that property if you're going to accumulate residential real estate or commercial? There's a lot of decisions to be made. And, you know, you can't make them until you get there. I mean, when you get there, will there be any social upheaval still going on? I mean, do you want to buy an apartment building in Philadelphia or Boston when people are still shooting each other? I don't think so. So, it's too hard a question to answer. If you want to look at the last depression, real estate turned out well because we had a war, and we won. And we might have another war and we may not win. Allah may win the war. So, hard questions to answer.
JFK in 1963, through executive order, printed up United States notes and sent them into circulation, thus bypassing the Fed. Any chance of that happening again? That's from Chuck.
Not a chance. Not a chance. These people control everything. The only way that you're going to do that is to take over the government and throw them all out. It's the only way it's going to happen. Going to the ballot box is over. You're either going to live in your knees or you're going to die in your feet with your hand on your weapon. That's the way it's going to be. There's no letter writing or anything else. They're not going to listen to you. They don't care. They're owned by the bankers and the insurance companies and Wall Street and corporate America and APAC. You don't have a representative government anymore. So don't think that your court system or your political system is going to be at your disposal to change. Not a chance. The game's over. They own your country. Unless you take it back from them, you know what they're going to do to you.
We spoke about this question a little bit earlier in the program when we first started about charts and so from Dan. He sent us lots of questions, so I'm going to go ahead and ask. And he says, we have all experienced how the spot gold and silver COMEX markets are manipulated in 2008. This activity occurs in opposition to and in spite of strong fundamental and technical evidence to the contrary. This makes it extremely difficult to predict short-term price direction. With your extensive experience, how much of a chance exists that gold and silver will retest the 840 and 680 lows in late 2008 to form a classic double bottom in 2009 before making a strong rally?
The chances of that happen are 20%. 80% that it will not. I mean, we've got Tim Wood and Gary North telling us a year ago they were convinced gold was going to 500. And gold at the time was around 800. Well, as you well know, gold is around 940. It got as low intraday as 680, and they were dead wrong. And Tim Wood's been wrong about everything that I know of. In fact, his publication went out of business. And Gary North was one of the big promoters, along with John Malden, of Y2K, and they made a fortune off it. And they were wrong. And incidentally, I've known both of them for 40 years. But, you know, a spade's a spade.
There's a lot of people wrong about Y2K, and Gary North was one of them. But you know what his problem was? He disappeared afterwards.
That's right.
He didn't have the guts to stay there and say, gee, you know, we're eating crow and, you know, we misread things and blah, blah, blah. He disappeared for a year or so.
That's
until
right.
gold started turning around. So
and,
while
and
it
so
was
didn't Malden.
Yeah, so while gold was being driven to 250, they disappear. And then when
Another one was Dennis Gartman.
Yeah, he did the same
Now,
thing.
he didn't disappear, but he was a big promoter, and he was dead wrong. And I was writing my publication, and I said there is not going to be a Y2K. And you know how I knew? Because I talked to somebody who I knew who was in the Central Intelligence Agency, and I said, what is the answer to this? And he gave it to me. That's how I knew.